Hello, welcome. My name is Rebecca Norlinda Wright. I work as a study and career guidance counsellor here at Malmö International School. At least I do so for just a couple more weeks. At the end of September, I will be finishing my employment here, and there will be a new person taking my place. Before I go, I would like to record this presentation explaining to you the procedure when applying to upper secondary school in Sweden. So the target audience is primarily parents and guardians of students in MYP4. However, if you are a parent or guardian to a student in the younger MYP years, this could also be very beneficial to listen. So the schedule, the points that I will be raising today are a brief summary of the types of programs which are available, the entry requirements, the merit points, which is basically grades, Freakfoot. I will go through this timeline of when to apply and how to apply, and finally some tips for parents and guardians. So before I begin, I just want to have a quick moment to look at the education system in Sweden. So the students in MYP4 are currently in the yellow section, they're coming towards the end of compulsory schooling. And the next step is upper secondary school or gymnasium, which is in the red ring there. So this step is typically 3 years, and after gymnasium, upper secondary school, the student can begin working or continue on to further studies at university, högskola or folkhögskola. So it's really basic. There are 3 kind of main types of programs. We have vocational programs, which prepare students for a profession and further studies. So a student can have a professional title and begin working, and also choose the path of university if they wish to do so. We also have university preparatory programs, which are theoretical and prepare the student for further studies. And then we have other programs. In this category, we have the IB, but we also have other educations, which I will also mention in more detail. So first of all, if we look at the IB diploma program. So the IB diploma program is essentially 6 subjects, and these subjects have a particular focus on languages and maths. There's a common misconception that the diploma program is very similar to the Swedish naturvetenskaps program, but this is, I would say, not true. There is some science, however, the focus again is language and maths. So DP is a very theoretical education which prepares the students for further studies at university. The teaching environment is very much like university in lecture halls, and it very requires some motivated students. All teaching and course material is in English, and what's very particular of the diploma program are these final exams. So at the end of the the 3rd year, the students will have final exams testing their knowledge in all 6 of those subjects. And these exams make up for 75% of the final grade. So this I'd like to really mention if there is students who have a very hard time with stress, particularly around exams. Be very aware of this education setup. Puts a lot of pressure on the final grade. So after studies at DP, a student can continue on to study university abroad, but also in Sweden. So the requirements to study university in Sweden can be met with diploma program, depending on how much Swedish the student would read. The diploma program can be found at 4 schools here in Skåne. We have Borgarskolan in Malmö, Katedralskolan in Lund, the International School of Helsingborg, and Söderportsgymnasiet in Kristianstad. The first year of the diploma program is called pre-DP, pre-diploma program. So it's a preparatory year, 1 year preparing the students for the program, which starts in year 2. So here is a picture which I've taken from Borgarskola's website, showing what the students read during that first year. So we see that they read a first language, Swedish or English, a foreign language, English or Swedish, and a modern language. And here we can pick from French, German or Spanish. They also read history, social sciences, theory of knowledge, which is a short course in logic and philosophy, biology, chemistry, physics, maths and PE. So all of those subjects are read during the first year. And as I said, the diploma program starts in year 2 and is 2 years then, so year 2 and 3. And here is where the student can start picking some options. So the student will read essentially 6 subjects over the course of 2 years. The 3 of these subjects will be at standard level, which is 150 hours of teaching, and 3 at higher level, which is 240 hours of teaching. So there are 6 subject categories, as you can see by each dot represents a different category, and the student picks 1 subject from each category. So we have here language A, your first language, which you can read either English language and literature, Swedish language and literature, or a self-taught language. Now this is another language, perhaps a mother tongue, which a student wants to have as a first language, but there is no teaching in this, so it's all self-taught. Language B, the student would pick a second language, which should be French, Spanish, Swedish, or English. Now, particularly at Borgarskolan, if a student has been in Sweden for longer than 4 years, they typically do not accept a student to read Swedish as a second language. So be aware of that. We have INS, and here you pick either economics, global politics, history, business and management, or psychology. Again, you just pick 1. Science is a category by itself, and here we have biology, chemistry, physics, and environmental systems and societies. The 5th category is maths, so maths has to be read at either standard level or higher level. And the final category is either art, or the student gets to pick 1 more subject from those first 4 categories. So a student could have 2 first languages, or 2 second languages, or 2 INS subjects, or 2 sciences, instead of reading art. At Borgarskolan particularly, they don't offer art at the moment because students have, it's just not popular, so it's not being offered. However, this can change from year to year, and it also could look very different at Katedralskolan. So, in addition to these 6 subjects, the student at IB will also have courses in CAS, which stands for Creativity, Activity and Service. So CAS is basically contributing to society. So it could be teaching a guitar lesson or running a youth football team and getting grades and points for this. So it's a bit more flexibility based upon interest. That's a course for itself. We have theory of knowledge, which is also that, well, like I mentioned before, that course in logic and philosophy. And finally, an extended essay, which is like a final project at the end of DP. Yeah. Another option within the IB is the career-related program. So this program is called Business Administration in Hospitality Management, often shortened to BAM. So what is BAM? So you pick a minimum of 2 courses from IB DP, so a minimum of those 2 courses from the previous slide, as well as career-related courses within the hospitality industry and business. Spanish is also mandatory because they have a collaboration with hotels in Spain, so there will be trips to Spain included in the program. And Swedish is also strongly encouraged because they say the program is offered in Sweden. So I'm working with the hospitality industry. I know they have a collaboration with Malmö Live, working in the hotel there, where it is required to speak Swedish. So it's very much encouraged. So this program, BAM, it prepares the students for a profession within the hospitality industry, as well as further studies at university. So again, just like the vocational programs, there are 2 options open here. And it's only offered at Borgarskolan in Malmö because it was them who developed this program. And similar to DP, there is also a preparatory year in BAM, in Business Administration in Hospitality Management. The subjects included here are Swedish, English, modern language, maths, history, social science, natural science, PE, information and communication, service learning, and branch learning. So those final 2 are where we get the requirements and knowledge for working in the hospitality industry and the service industry. That's where those courses come in. Okay, so the entry requirements to IB. So for both of these IB options, DP and CP, it requires an entrance test. And this test is testing the students' knowledge in English and mathematics. The reason being that there is a focus on English and maths in the program, and the schools want to ensure that the students who get accepted, that they have some sort of minimum requirement in order to keep up. So with that being said, if a student does not pass the test, they could very well find the program too difficult. So it's a threshold test. They want students to be accepted, but they want students who are capable of the program to be accepted. There's often a lot of pressure on these tests because they can only be done once. And the test results are shared between all IB schools in Skåne. So should a student write the test at Borgarskolan and fail, they will also not be able to apply to the other schools in Lund or Helsingborg or Kristianstad. And the opposite applies as well. Should they write the test in Malmö and pass, then they have gone through the first hurdle and they could be accepted to the school, any of the IB schools in Skåne. And CP, the BAM program, they're also an interview. And the purpose of this is because it's working with hospitality, there's a lot of social skills included in the program. So they just want to make sure that the students are aware of this and just have a discussion, get an idea of who they are and why they've applied for this program. So that's the first requirement, is the entrance test. The difference being that the entrance test is the level of maths in the entrance test for DP is higher than for the CP. So once they have sat the test, there is also requirements on the final grades from MYP4. So the very minimum which is required in order to be accepted is to pass English. We need at least a grade 2 in language literature or a grade 3 in language acquisition phase 4. You also need to pass mathematics, which would require a grade 3 in math standard or a grade 2 in math extended. Additionally, it's required at least a grade 3 in all other subjects. So to pass all subjects essentially. And then the student will compete for a place by obtaining as high grades as possible. We move on to the Swedish national programs. So here we have 18 different options. There are 12 vocational programs which prepare students for a profession and further studies at university. And we have university preparatory programs which prepare students for further studies. So we're beginning with the vocational programs. I will read them in English, but again, they're all taught in Swedish. So we have child and recreation, where a student can work within schools as a school assistant or in sports facilities as a personal instructor or a football trainer. We have, that's come away there, but building and construction program for a bygge anläggning. Here, the student could become a carpenter, a bricklayer, general kind of building or driving the machines like trucks and cranes on working construction sites. We have electricity and energy, and here a student could become an electrician. They could also look into computer, IT management and service, or even energy, working on like big wind turbines and things. Vehicle and transport, a student could become a mechanic or a lorry mechanic, car mechanic, lorry mechanic, a lorry driver, even someone who repairs damages on vehicles, aesthetically, painting and mending repairs. Business administration, this is quite similar to the Swedish, the IB BAM. It's working within the service, working in looking at bookkeeping, looking at management. It's more focused on management. Handicraft, here a student could become a hairdresser, a barber, a florist, a furniture carpenter. In industrial technology, we have welding, we have some working in sort of big warehouses, programming machines to which make furniture and things like mass production in warehouses. Natural resource use. Here a student could focus more on farming, gardening, some animal welfare, forestry, lots of outdoorsy focus here. Restaurant or food management. A student could be trained to become a chef, a baker, a bartender. HVAC and property maintenance is plumbing and sort of general property maintenance. Health and social care, a student can have some basic nursing, so become an assistant nurse once graduating. So those are the vocational programs. And the university preparatory programs, we have economics, where a student can focus more on economics or law. Aesthetics, a student can pick between art, design, theatre, music, drama. Humanities, a lot of focus on language here. You can read Latin or other languages and history. Natural sciences, there's a lot of focus on maths and the sciences, very focused on biology, chemistry, physics and maths. Social sciences, we can have a focus on, I forget the word, beteendewetenskap, working with people, and leadership and psychology. There is a focus more on journalism, and there's also a focus on more like the INS subjects which we read here at school, so geography and history. And the final one is the engineering program, with again a lot of focus on maths, but also can have focus on architecture, product design, some art, but focus on product design as well. So yeah, very basic summary of the different options within the Swedish national programs. This picture, I just want to show that the similarities between the vocational programs and the university preparatory programs, because we see there are some puzzle pieces here. And if you look on the left side, which was the vocational programs, the biggest chunk is called programfördjupning. There is more of a focus on the practical side of the professions which they're studying. Whereas with the university preparatory programs, the biggest puzzle piece is the gymnasiegemensamma ämnen, the common subjects. Here we have the theoretical subjects such as Swedish, history, maths, English. So there's more focus on that within the högskoleförberedande programs. With that being said, the vocational programs, the students will still be reading Swedish, maths, English. It's just less of those subjects, so they're not so much in depth. But all the requirements are the same in both. The structure is the same, but it's just different weight and difference in different parts of the courses. So if I quickly go through, the common subjects are again, they're read in every single program in the Swedish ones. They can't be avoided, and that's Swedish, English, history, PE, maths, natural science, religious studies, and social science. The next category is called common subjects within a program. So everyone who studies a certain program will read these subjects despite which school they go to. Then they pick an orientation. And these are what I was previously describing when I said, like in economics, you can focus more on economics or more on law. That's when you pick your orientation. And the subjects are the same depending on the choice of orientation. Then you have your specialization, which is the schools themselves have made a package. So here can be some differences based on if you have economics program at 2 different schools, the specialization subjects could vary based upon the school. In every single program is something called individual choice, which is two courses where the student can pick themselves based upon interests. So they have some options of forming their own program. And finally, we have a final project, which is completed in the 3rd and final year of upper secondary school. Those are the national programs, but there are also some other further programs which are a little bit outside of these options. So there are the options of sports educations, idrottsutbildning, where a student is studying a national program, say the natural science program, as well as training to become an elite as professional athletes within their sport. So this option is for students who are actively competing and training on a regular basis. So they have to be with a sports association, connected to a sports association. There are two different types. We have league, RIG, which are for those who aim to compete internationally, and NIU, NIU, which is for those who aim to compete nationally or regionally. There are two admission procedures when applying to these sports educations. First, the student has to apply to the sports and go for tryouts, where they're assessed if they have some potential within their sport to compete on these levels. So they have to pass the tryouts, and then they have to get accepted to the program just like all the other students. So these is it could be an option for students who want to study at upper secondary school, but also want to have time for their sport, and they're taking it very seriously. And there are different dates for different sports associations. So yeah, you could ask the trainer at the sports club, because they normally have a collaboration together, or you could also contact me and I can help you find out the dates for the particular sport. There are also riksrekryterande yrkesprogram. These are educations which have been formed by the Swedish government because they've seen a really big need of these professions. Maybe because there's not that many of them. Maybe it's becoming very specialized or maybe perhaps they just in a lack of people within these professions. So here in Skåne, for example, there is airplane technician, also helicopter technicians. They're a bit outside of Malmö though, but there are some options there as well. Lärlingsutbildning is essentially an apprenticeship. So any of those vocational programs which I previously mentioned, electrician, the building, the healthcare, all of these can be read as an apprentice, which means that at least 50% of the education is at a workplace. So you would go to a workplace, follow their rules and help out with their assignments, and go to school to do the theoretical subjects, Swedish, maths, English, for example. There's also school courses in spets, which is where you have an extra focus on a subject. Like very deep focus on a theoretical. For example, we can have spets in maths or spets in history. So it's a different structure to the national programs. And they could also read some subjects at university level. So these are for students who have a really, really big interest in a certain subject area. And finally, there's something called särskild variant, which is when a national program has been adapted to be a little bit varied. For example, we have horse caretaking or green tourism. So those are all the options available within the Swedish national programs. The entry requirements, what was required to get into these programs? So a student would need to pass Swedish, either a grade 3 in language literature or a grade 3 in language acquisition phase 5, that's the minimum. Again, we need to pass English, have a grade 2 in language literature or a grade 3 in language acquisition phase 4. In maths, we need a grade 3 in maths standard or a grade 2 in maths extended, and at least a grade 3 in all other subjects. So again, this is the very minimum. To summarize what we discussed so far in terms of entry requirements, for the national programs, you need to pass Swedish, English and maths, particularly those ones, but also the at least a grade 3 in the other ones, and compete for a place by achieving as high grades as possible. And with IB, as I said before, we have an entrance test testing English and maths. There's no requirement on passing Swedish for IB, however you need to pass English and maths as well as your other subjects. And then achieve as high grades as possible to compete for a place. And I'll explain this more in detail in a moment in terms of what I mean by competing for a place. What happens if a student does not pass one of these subjects? Well, then we have something called introduction programs. So the aim of the programs are to pass the missing subjects from school and continue on to study at upper secondary school or into employment. So as you can see by this picture on the right here, typically when we talk about upper secondary school, we go directly to the national programs. However, someone perhaps did not fail maths or failed the IB test and has missing one of the requirements. So then they can go to an introduction program, read those courses, and then continue on back onto the path of upper secondary school in the national programs or begin working. So here's a little short case just to exemplify when these programs are relevant. So it could be that a student has applied for a diploma program or the BAM CP program but failed the entrance test, or then they can't study any of the IB programs. And perhaps the student also doesn't have a passing grade in Swedish, which means that they can't study any of the Swedish national programs. So then the remaining option would be to read an introduction program and depending on what they're missing, read those subjects in order to carry on to the other programs. And the duration of these is anywhere between 1 and 3 years, depending on how much the student is missing and what their goal is. Okay, so the admission process essentially has two parts. What I've been discussing this far is part 1, qualification, which are the subjects which the student needs to pass in order to be qualified for admission. But part 2 is the merit points. So the final grades in MYP4 are converted into a Swedish equivalent where the highest total amount is 340 points. And these points are used to compete for a place on a specific program at a specific school. Now, the previous Studying Career Guidance Counsellor at Bledins created an app which is a very useful tool in helping to convert these IB points to Swedish points. So I recommend downloading the app. It's called MYP4 SWE, and you put in your IB grades. At least you could either put in what the student has as final grades in MYP3 just to see where they're at now, and also use it to kind of predict, okay, if I had a 4 in English, I think I could get a 5 as a final grade, and kind of play with what they expect or hope to achieve as final merit points. This app doesn't have the subject category of music because they don't study music at Bledins. So in order for this to be accurate, the student should add the subject German in phase 3 and they use that as instead of music, and then the category, the calculation will be correct. But just to kind of briefly explain how this point system is calculated, the final grades in MYP4 is on a scale from 1 to 7. Not 8 like it has been previously. 1 to 7 is the highest in MYP4, and depending on that grade is converted to points. So a 7 is 20 points, a 6 is 17.5, 5 is 15 points, 4 is 12.5 points, a 3 is 10 points, and both 2 and 1 are at 0. However, you can see here in brackets that if a student is reading English language literature or Maths Extended, then their final grade is awarded 1 point higher on the scale. So if a student is studying in the class English language literature and receives a 5 as a final grade, it's essentially a 6. So it's 17.5 points. Same thing for Maths Extended. The reason being that the curriculum in English language literature and Maths Extended is more advanced than what the Swedish students are studying in Swedish schools. And so in order for it to be an equal translation of points, these courses are awarded higher points. So it's only for these two, no other subjects. So basically, students should convert their grades to points and calculate them. If a student is reading French or Spanish, it must be at least grade phase 3 in order for the subjects to count to the final grade. So assuming that a student is in phase 3 for French and Spanish, you then divide the total number by 10 and then multiply this subtotal with 17. And here we get estimated merit points. So once we have an idea of the students' estimated merit points, we can see what is required for different schools. Now here I have a picture of the admission requirements for the Swedish social science program in Malmö. So you can see on the left is the schools. The first column where it says meritvärde lägsta, that is the lowest, the final student that was accepted to the program, the lowest requirement to be accepted. And the final category is meritvärde medel. This is the average points that the student had for admission. So this is what we use when we assess whether students have the likelihood of being accepted to a program at a certain school. So a student should always be aiming towards the average section. The closer they are to the average, the more likely they are to be accepted to a program. If they're leaning more, if their merit points are leaning more towards the lowest category, then they can still apply. However, it's less likely to be accepted. There's still a chance, but we want to have a plan B and a plan C if that's the case. So when we talk about being accepted to a school, we have to look at the program and the school because it varies depending on both of these fields. So yeah, another example. This is the entry requirements for IB last year. We have Borgaskolan was the first one. The average was 277, and BAM, the average was 223. And the last one here is Katedral, TB at Katedral, the average was 306. We see on the left it says A in each of these sections, which means that there was no lowest because there was still space available. So neither of these programs and schools filled up their spaces. So if a student was had lower grades, they still had a chance to get in if they passed the entrance test. But again, this can vary from year to year. Last year, I know that Borgaskolan filled their spaces, so it does vary. So always try and aim for the average to be more sure about the possibilities. At the end of this presentation, I will show you how to find these yourself. This is a picture just to kind of illustrate how the admission procedure works. So we see in the middle here we have the average, who is kind of safe in the middle in terms of students' points. The higher points you have, the more likely you are of getting accepted. The lowest is the person who had the last spot. Then we have the reserve. So if a student who applied for IB and with 177 and the lowest was 180, for example, then they're still qualified. But now they're on the waiting list. They were on a reserve because there was no more spots available. So that's how it works. Yeah. So frequent, I just want to say a short thing about frequent. I often get the question if our students at MIS are applying on the same terms as Swedish students. And the answer is no, they are not, because IB grades are essentially international grades, and so they end up in a different quota. So this picture at the bottom here is to kind of illustrate how it could look. So a free quote is the red little segment here, and the purple segment is students applying from Swedish schools with Swedish grades. So students can end up in free quote because they have foreign grades or even special reasons. For maybe someone has been sick and wasn't able to achieve as high grades as they would have been otherwise if they weren't sick. Then they also can be in this free quote. The segment here is not very representative of the amount of spaces. It could be 1 space available, it could be 10, it could be 20. It all depends on the school. So for the free school, it's the principal who decides how many to admit, and for the kommunalskola, it's gymnasieantagning who deal with the admission. So it all depends. But I can just kind of say, in my 2 years of working here, I've never seen a discrepancy that one of our students has the required points and hasn't been accepted. So I think for our students, it's even more important to be aiming towards the average admission in order to be more sure of receiving a space. But just to kind of answer the question of, no, we don't apply we're not competing against Swedish students in the same terms, but they should still be kind of using the same admission points system as the Swedish students. So here is a timetable for this year, how the process works for applying. So the autumn term is all about research. This is a time for students and yourselves to be finding out as much as possible to feel comfortable about the choices, to be more certain about their choice of school. So I have already gone out to the classes and held a presentation, very similar to this presentation I'm having with you, to show them all the options, how it all works, and things like this. And I have begun having individual meetings with students to get an idea of their plans in terms of both school but also the future, and to discuss if their options, or what they're basing their choices upon, and if it's something which could suit them and their personalities and their strengths and their weaknesses. Obviously, I won't be able to meet with everyone before I leave, but I'm having some meetings until I leave, and then the next career guidance counsellor will take over. So everyone is called to at least one meeting for around an hour's long meeting, but students are welcome to book more meetings than just one. And then in around December or January, I normally go out to the classrooms and I show them step for step how to apply. This is something I will hand over to the next career guidance counsellor. So the students at this term are encouraged to read about the various programs. There's a lot of material online, lots of videos as well, because it could be lots of information to take in. So I recommend some videos, and I will show some links of how to find these too. Make a list of pros and cons, just to kind of get to visualize what are the pros and cons instead of keeping it all in their head. That's normally a really useful tool just to help with their decision making. There will be a school fair, Gymnasiemessa, on the 9th of November. All of the students in MYP4 will be going together during school hours with the school and the teachers. So that's when all the schools in Malmö and Vellinge and Trelleborg have different booths, and they can spend several hours walking around, asking questions, taking some information. There's normally teachers, principals, and current students also at these school fairs. However, you're also welcome to go separately. On the 11th of November is open to the public. And this takes place at Malmö Mässa in Hilja. Students are also strongly encouraged to attend the open evenings at various schools. This is called Öppet hus in Swedish. And I'll show you where you can find these dates on skånegi.se. And the purpose of these open evenings is, of course, to kind of do more research instead of just reading and watching videos, but go to the schools, get an impression of the atmosphere, meet the teachers, see if the building, if it's too big or if it feels too loud, or if they can see what professions are there. Do they have school counsellors? Do they have libraries? Kind of get an idea of the everyday of the school. And also it's encouraged to shadow a student. It's also called skuggning in Swedish. It can also be called student for a day, and it's essentially this: being a student for the day. So what this is student contacts a particular school and require to shadow a particular program. The schools normally wish to arrange this after the open evenings. They normally request that the student first goes to the school, has a look, and if they're still interested, then to shadow. And so they will be paired together with a student who is currently reading the program they're interested in, and they go to all lessons throughout the day and get an idea of how it could be to be a student at the school. So this is very strongly encouraged. Students normally really appreciate this. It's a way to try out their option before committing to it. We allow students to do this twice during the autumn semester, and get accepted leave in order to be able to do this. So all information about skuggning can be found on the school's website normally, and in the case that you can't, then you should contact the gymnasium school's study and careers guidance counsellor, SUV. Not all schools allow this, I should also say, but many schools do. So in the spring term is time to apply. So in January, the students will be sent a letter home with their login details. It's sent centrally from the admissions office, so it's not me who sends these out, but it's a letter to the login details. So keep this safe. They need access to these all the way until July, August. So help them keep this safe. And the application is open January 15th to February 15th. So it's open for 1 month, and it's not like first come, first serve or anything like that. A student can log in January 15th, get an idea of how the website works, and begin adding some options, and they have until the February the 15th to be finished. Strongly recommend not waiting to the last moment with this. If a student has applied for a diploma program or BAM, they will be called to an entrance test, which normally takes place in March. And it's normally half of the day, like the morning, normally half the day, and they come back for lunch. On April the 15th, the students will receive a preliminary admission results. So at the end of this semester, at the end of the autumn, the teachers compile the students' predicted final grades. So based upon what the students have shown their teachers this semester, they give them a prediction, what they think they will have as a final grade. Now this is just a prediction, and it has no influence on the final decision. The purpose of these preliminary results is just that, is preliminary. It's a test round just to see if they have a chance of getting into the schools which they have been hoping for. So perhaps if they don't get in preliminarily, then maybe they should add some more options and do some more research. But again, it's just a test and has no effect on the final decision. On April 25th to May 15th is re-elections. So if anyone wants to make any changes to the application that they did in January, February, this is the chance to do so, and this is the only chance to do so. And by making changes, it makes no effect to the application. It's not late, it's not lesser valued, it's just a chance to make changes. And then here we have in May, it's a second opportunity to write the entrance test, but only for those who did not apply in February. So you can't do it twice, it's just 2 different opportunities to do the test. And on July 1st, the students will find out their final admission results. Without going into too much detail, but they will only get into one school, one program. So it's really important to have order of priority when they put their schools. Number 1 is the school and program I most want to get into. If I don't get into number 1, I want number 2. If I don't get into number 2, I want number 3, and carry on like that. So on July the 1st, they will find out what they have been accepted to. This admission result also needs to be accepted or declined, of course, if they're not happy with that. And this is done by July 23rd. And if the student still has not been accepted to a place by July 1st, it's not too late. There is reserve applications which begin in August 8th. But it should be said that when we're applying in this stage, reserve stage, the students are applying to the schools which still have space left. So it's often not the most popular schools which have space left. Obviously, they normally fill all their spots, but there are still options available in August as well. So the key points when it comes to applying, I already mentioned this, apply for several schools and programs and place them in order of priority. Some programs are more popular than others, which means there are not always enough spaces available for those who have applied. And that's when we get into this the house that I showed with the students inside. The ones who are the higher grades have priority. And the first option of the application is considered before all the other options further down. So if a student isn't offered a place on their first option, the option below will be considered, etc., etc. So have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, etc. I normally recommend that if a student has around 6 realistic options, but if they're struggling in some subjects and not sure what some introduction programs on there, it could be 10, 15 options. It all depends on the student. And as I said, if a student is at a risk of not qualifying for IB or the Swedish programs, then it's really important to have an introduction program at the bottom of the application. So you need to kind of cover all your scenarios. So some advice to parents and guardians: talk to your child about their choice of education and their future plans. I'm sure that you do so already, otherwise maybe you wouldn't be here. Just by talking about it and getting an understanding of why, and is it their choices? Are they being influenced by their friends? Have discussions about that at home. And if they have no idea, that's also fine. There's time to figure this out. They can obviously meet with a study and careers guidance counsellor, but also talk to them about, okay, what are you interested in? What are your strengths? And also, what are your weaknesses? What do you find really difficult? And what are your values? And based upon that, what of these options, which I presented today, which of these sound the most fun? Which sound the most interesting? By picking something which sounds interesting and fun, they will most likely get very good grades, and we need these grades when applying to university. Have a plan A, B, and C. I can't stress that enough. Have more options. You can also assist them by following them to the open evenings, öppet hus, and encourage shadowing a school or a program. Help them keep track of important dates and login information. There's a lot to keep track of during this process. It's so common that the students lose their login. They can just take a photo of their login details, keep that safe. Support them in their studies, of course. Keep in mind that their choice of program doesn't decide their whole future. This is just one of the first times that they're making a decision in terms of what they want to study. But as I said before, all of these options which I've mentioned today all lead to university. There are always different paths to the same goal. Finally, I just want to if you're interested, I thought I'd show you the admission results for 2023. So the students who are just beginning upper secondary school this year, so last year's MYP4 students. These are the programs. So we can see here that IB is very popular here at MIS. That's the biggest chunk there, followed by social science program. And then we have the natural science program. Last year we had 3 students who get accepted to an introduction program. One of them because they failed the IB test and did not speak Swedish, and the other 2 students spoke Swedish, but they both failed maths. So in my 2 years, we always have around 2 or 3 students who go to these introduction programs. So yeah, this is how it looked like last year. And here's the schools which they got accepted to. Borgarskola is very popular. Half of our students got accepted there last year. Followed by Percivitas and students who studied. These are Malmö schools. Then we have outside of Malmö as a separate category. So finally, I wanted to recommend some websites. So we have the first one, skånegi.se. This is like your main website when it comes to this process. You'll find you could be able to search for the programs which I mentioned today, but also which schools offer these programs, because I haven't really mentioned the schools so much today, but all that can be found on Skånegi. You'll even find like maps of where they are when they have their open evenings. You will find these charts that I've been showing to show the merit points from previous years. And this is also the application website. So whether students will submit their application in January is also through skånegi.se. This is the main website to kind of orientate yourself with. Another useful website is from Skolverket. It's called utbildningsguiden.skolverket.se. Here you can find impartial statistics, because it's the Swedish School Board who collected these statistics about the schools and their performance. So here you can see how many of the students reading a certain program at a certain school, how many of them graduate, and what their average points are towards university, how big the class sizes are, how many of the teachers working at these schools are qualified. This can all be found on this website. It also has a really useful tool where you can pick a gymnasia program, say technique, and you can see examples of university degrees which you have like the requirements for. So you can get an idea of the next step towards university from the Swedish programs. Framtid.se is another useful website. It's in Swedish, but it has information about various professions, and it's targeted towards young people. So it's in Swedish, but it's like kind of a more accessible language. So you can get an idea of how much of the work of the tasks that these professions have, how to become working in a certain profession, the average salary. So it's very user friendly, this website. And finally, jobbarfrisk.se, which is all about health risks in various occupations and how to prevent them, how to avoid them. So it could be you're curious about the health risks in hairdressing, for example, all the chemicals, or it could be the student already has a health problem, asthma, for example, and wants to know more information about what to think about when working in certain professions. So that was my final slide. If you're listening this far, well done. It's a lot of information to take in. And yeah, I am here for a couple more weeks to answer all of your questions. I only work at the school on Tuesdays, and the next Career Guidance Council will also be here on Tuesdays. As soon as the recruitment process is finished, information will be published on ManageBack and the Guardian newsletter. So more information to follow regarding that. But otherwise, you're very welcome to get into contact. It's also, if you would like to arrange a meeting at the school as well, together with the student, that's also fine. So just keep in touch. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. Bye.